First off, I want to thank the brave men and women who work behind the wall. I want to thank them on a national level because their job goes unrecognized.
How do they try to turn a guard?
Well, correctional officer. Sorry, I apologize. But correctional officer.
How are you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, this is a very unique dialogue today. We're going to be talking about the importance of labels, specifically in this episode, inmate labels. Now, guys, we've covered this topic before, but not from this perspective. So we have a few things we want to cover here, and I want to make sure that this is a dialogue that keeps us, we have to be open-minded. I want you guys to hear what I'm saying, but be open-minded with the need for this video to get out there. It's part of the evolution of where we are headed, and it's actually probably one of the most toughest videos I had to do because it required me to look inwards and make sure that I'm doing enough to maintain the tools that we need. So for me, I agree with the importance of labels. It's how we see things. I actually wrote a whole book that relates to that. The inmate label is important to me because it reminds us of our prescribed role, because it puts us in a position where we know who we are because we know who they are. You know, it keeps us within that boundary. And I've always been a supporter for that. Again, this is a tool. But I also realize today that we lose tools for two reasons. And I mean tools that are effective. Is one, we don't know how to explain it in a manner where the public understands why that tool is needed. And that's what I'm going to try to do now, because I do believe the tool is needed. Or, this is the worst part, we misuse it. I mean, think about that, though, guys. Think about the tools that we've had that have been taken away because it has been misused. Maybe not you personally, but maybe someone who has, and it's been generalized to where, well, you know, because it happened in one location, it can happen everywhere, so get rid of the tool. You know, what happens when you have officers that commit to bad practices, and now their bad actions become the definition of how that tool is utilized. So we need to be very protective of these tools and be careful in how those tools are employed. And yes, these labels are tools. Again, reminding us of the boundary and our prescribed role. So with that said, I want people to first realize that the reason why inmates have that label of inmate is because it puts us in the right frame of mind and when we are dealing with those inmates. I was taught right from the get-go that in order for you to be effective, you always have to remember who you are dealing with. Because at any time, an inmate, a manipulative inmate, could look to take you out of your prescribed role. And how do they do that? They do that by getting you to forget that they're an inmate, by making you see them as anything but an inmate. Now, to explain that argument, to get the public to understand why that is important, we have to relate to how that serves the inmate population. That's the business we're in right now. That's how it is perceived. So when we go to justify the tools that we need, we have to let the public know how those tools benefit the inmate population, because that's what they want to hear. So again, expressing the need for these tools have to come from how those tools make it effective for us to do our job so we can protect and serve the population that we oversee. So again, when it comes to the label, if an inmate takes staff out of their prescribed role, how could that affect the population? Well, when you have an officer or a staff member that's not doing what's expected of them, they put everybody at risk. You know, the inmates, the staff, I mean, generally the facility. So one reason why we need that tool, the label, is to keep people within their prescribed role. It doesn't give the inmate a chance to pull the staff member out of their prescribed role. And again, just the mental reminder of the boundaries that exist between me being an officer and me being the professional staff member and that person being an inmate. It doesn't mean that I have to call the inmate an inmate during every encounter. That's not the case. I mean, most of the time when I deal with inmate one-on-one, I'm not calling them inmate Smith or inmate. I'm not doing that. It's usually Mr. Smith, Mr. Daniels, Miss Smith, Miss Daniels, whatever the case. But when I write my reports, yes, my reports are going to have inmate Daniels, inmate Smith. Or when I address the population as a whole. I could say, hey, did the inmates get this? Did the inmates get that? So having that label in the back of my mind has given me that boundary, that level of protection. I know there are going to be some on the civilian side that may not utilize that label. Different departments that may utilize client, patient, resident. And I get that, but there has to be that reminder in the back of their mind of, hey, I need to remember who I'm dealing with because this isn't the real world. It's a little bit different here. But having said that, I get how their professional role may be related to those titles like client, resident, patient. And again, just understand the importance of that label. That's how I argue the need for that. It's very hard to argue against that because I expressed how that serves the inmate population. Not how it serves us, because that's going to be implied once I tell them how that serves the inmate population. So again, the tools that we utilize, how we express the need is by make sure the public sees how that protects the population. Because again, we are seen in that light as a service to the inmate population. And that's just where we're headed. So we don't want to get left behind by staying primitive in our thoughts and realize that we're not moving forward. Well, we're not moving forward because you don't know how to express our concerns from a perspective that the public understands. And when you're able to do that, guys, you'll find that someone will say, wow, I didn't think of it that way. And it finds it harder for them to go against what we are trying to maintain or keep. Now, the misusing. So when you look at the arguments is why they're trying to get rid of these labels is because the inmates are saying that we're looking to rehabilitate and these labels actually set us back. They're dehumanizing and they make us feel that we're inferior. Now, that's a very good argument. And again, the response to that can't be, no, that's not true, and then leave it at that. That can't be the response. The response, as I said, was kind of that other perspective of how that serves the population, and what we talked about, the prescribed role. But what I want to get at is how we could misuse a tool. And then the tool gets taken away from us because the public feels that I can't trust you with that tool. I can't trust that you're going to be effective with that tool. So the argument right now is that inmate has a negative connotation. So where does that come from? Because if you look at the definition of inmate, there's nothing negative in that. It just says someone confined to an institution, hospital, jail, prison, etc. So there's nothing negative in that. So having said that, what could be seen as negative is how we employ that and the context that's used every day. I mean, are we employing it in a manner that's professional, again, to protect us, keep those boundaries, or are we using it to remind the inmates of their place each and every moment we deal with them? To kind of say, yeah, I'm up here and you're down here. Again, it's the perspective of the public, and when we go to defend it, defend our position, we have to defend from a perspective that the public understands. So the negative connotation to the word inmate could come from how it's employed to the population. Now, again, we need this tool. We need that label. And the last thing we want to do is be our own worst enemy, and the worst thing is not to see that we're doing it. So again, just a dialogue to kind of get us to understand how the world sees us. And hopefully you guys are open-minded when you listen to this, because it's just a perspective. But I don't think that we need to remind the inmates of our elevated position. I think that's automatically implied in what we do, the authority that we're given. And now I know everything I say could always be contested, but let's just go with me for a moment. We're put in a trusted position. We have that level of authority and trust. We should. I know sometimes that's questionable because we have people solely taking it away. But having said that, maybe we haven't defended ourselves to a point where it makes it harder for them to take it away. So I used to find myself in a position where I would defend any challenge to my authority by reminding the inmate that I'm the officer and you're the inmate. Or I'm the sergeant and you're the inmate. But was I really de-escalating the situation? Or was I really just dealing with my pride? I mean, did I really have to remind the inmate of their place? Or was I really reminding myself? You know, it was a good point that was made my way today, and I had to really look inwards and saying, when I said that, was I looking to de-escalate the situation, or was I looking just to kind of remind myself that I'm in that position of authority? So with that said, the use of that label is not meant to put the inmate down here and you up here. That's how they're going to take away the tool. 100%. Because if it's utilized that way, that's where the conflict comes. And that's when an inmate's going to be able to easily express it. And then the public says, well, because it's being utilized that way, because when maybe when we did a tour, we noticed the officer for no reason said, hey, inmate over here, hey, inmate over there, hey, inmate over there. You know, I get that some people may do that. But when it comes to challenging that inmate's perspective, that's going to be hard to win that battle. You got to admit, guys, we have changed. We're moving in this one direction. We seem to have no control of that direction. So we need to find some way to get our input in that because we're moving regardless. So we have to make sure that we don't put ourselves in those positions where it makes it easier for someone to interpret what we're doing as misusing the tools that we've been trusted to have. And the reason why this argument, in my mind, was very important for me to get out there was I was thinking about negative connotations. And I was looking at inmate as, well, there's nothing negative in there. So how can an inmate sit there and say that that definition is negative? Someone who's confined to an institution, there's nothing negative there. But how we employ it gives them the reason to interpret it as being negative. So the first thing that came to my mind in a similar scenario was the title of social worker. Now, behind the wall, social workers have a function. They have a job. Their job is to service the inmate population, no different than our job. They provide programming. They provide resources. They do what they can to make sure that, while the inmate is staying here, they can, navigate their way through. But they also help the inmate transition to the outside, which we need that because we want inmates to change that mindset. Now, having said that, how many times in your career have you ever heard a custody member call another custody member a social worker because they thought they were overly involved with the inmate, or an inmate lover / social worker? Now think about that. The noble title of being a social worker, which connects to great functions that are needed within the prison, within the community at large, but now it's been connected to that negative connotation of inmate lover. So now think about how the social worker may feel having that noble title, but then having it connected to inmate lover. So again, a noble title, there's nothing negative in that, but how it's employed makes it become negative. And the only reason why that label has probably become negative is because there are some that still believe we work in an us versus them world. And I don't want people believing that. Because one, that's extremely stressful. And two is when we promote an us versus them world, the people that advocate for the inmate, because that's their job. So those departments like social services and mental health and those other departments, that's their job, they become the enemy. And now the problem is social worker, that title is only considered negative because it connects to the inmate population. How unfair is that? That's their job. That's what they're paid to do. but we've connected them to a negative label because of how we view the inmate population. So if we want a healthy work environment, the us versus them mentality doesn't work. It's actually very divisive. But now again, I say that story to say how you have that noble title of social worker, but how it's been employed in that manner has made it negative. To where custody will be saying, hey, I'm not no fucking social worker. And now you have the social workers that could be hearing that say, wow, they don't have no respect for what we do at all. Where's the partnership? Where's the unity that we need to survive? Now, I know a lot of officers may kind of, Gangi, what are you doing today? What are you talking about? But guys, I'm looking to build a bridge. I'm looking to connect us. But I'm also looking for ways to maintain tools that we need. And now the inmate label, how we employ it, has to be in a way that's professional, like I said, to keep our mindset right, keep us within that prescribed role, keep those boundaries in play. But if we're using it to kind of remind the inmate of their place, that I'm here and you're there, and those inmates express that argument that, hey, that title affects me in regards to me being rehabilitated or me feeling inferior, the public is going to accept that. And the public is going to have more momentum to move their argument forward to get rid of that label. Now, who's at fault there? So we have to make sure that whatever we do, we don't misuse the tools that we have and give people a reason to take it away. You know, we need these tools. And most of the time when we express the need, we don't express it from a perspective that's understood. So think about this in the back of your mind. When you have a tool and we want to utilize that tool, we have to make sure that we mention how that tool serves the inmate population. Yes, I believe in, solitary, restricted housing. I believe in all that. But the reason why we've lost those tools is we've never expressed how it was beneficial to the population. We may have expressed how it was only beneficial to us. And we watched those tools disappear because we're not giving the public an understanding from a foundation that they can understand from. So it's just food for thought, but I don't want to lose that label. My whole book is centered on the importance of that label, making sure that inmates cannot pull us out of our prescribed role by making us forget who they are so we forget our purpose. So again, just food for thought. Love your thoughts. As always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.